On this edition of Southern Newsweek, travel agents say they are flat out with people wanting to go on holidays overseas. A warbirds plane performs aerobatics over Wanaka, and an Easter egg hunt puts a smile on the dial for people in Gore. Kia ora, good evening, I'm Hannah Wilkins. Travel agents say business is off the hook as New Zealanders start looking beyond the borders for holidays for the first time in years. Many people are looking to reunite with families overseas, while others are wanting to break their cabin fever with luxury holidays.
As travel borders reopen, an increasing number of Kiwis are preparing to take flight.
A lot of people reconnecting all over the world, South America, Europe, Asia, UK particularly. What we're starting to see now is people starting to think about winter breaks and things, so Fiji and Rarotonga are proving exceedingly popular.
House of Travel Dunedin retail manager Tony Boomer says the team is as busy as they were in March 2019 before the pandemic. The biggest reason for the jump back in business is people wanting to reconnect with family as borders reopen. But he says in these COVID times, even a trip across the ditch can be a complicated process.
Yeah, travel is a lot more complex at the minute. I think it will continue to be so for quite some time. There's measures in place now that we hadn't seen before. They're changing. At the time there, they were changing every day. There's certainly a lot of complexity involved. Just going across the Tasman is a form-filling exercise.
Travel agents were forced to scale back or close during the height of the pandemic. But Boomer says business is now taking off again. Airfares are still more expensive than prior to COVID due to increased fuel costs. There's also fewer airlines currently flying out of New Zealand and not enough scheduled flights to meet the demand. But despite the increase in bookings, Boomer's store is operating with just a quarter of the staff it once had, which he says they're managing by working smarter and harder.
We've just working really long hours at the moment. Everyone here has obviously stayed in the business, so we're really committed to making a success of it. So, I couldn't ask more of my staff and right across the country.
Air New Zealand says despite the uncertainty, it's worked hard to prepare for the return of international travel. The airline is expecting to be back to 90% of pre-COVID-19 levels by 2025. In Dunedin, the South Today.
If you're looking for an outdoor activity for your kids these school holidays, fishing could be an option. North Canterbury Fish and Game has just released a few hundred catchable salmon into special fishing lakes near Christchurch, which are reserved for junior anglers.
Restocking the waters for that fishy tail. North Canterbury Fish and Game has just released catchable sized king salmon into the 3 junior only fishing lakes at the groins beside the Clearwater Golf Course. They chose to release the young king or chinook salmon there to help young fishing licence holders hone their skills over the school holidays.
So today we are putting in 250 salmon. They're kindly donated by Mount Cook Alpine Salmon, and they're all about this big, about 2 to 4 pounds, so perfect size for the table.
There's not many spots like the designated fishing lakes at the groins, where young anglers can develop and improve their skills before tackling the wide open rivers or lakes.
The groins here are a really important junior fishery. So these lakes are for kids only, so we have the children and junior licence holders only are allowed to fish here.
North Canterbury Fish and Game believe the area is an important stepping stone for young children, allowing them to try fishing with a better chance of success, especially after a fresh release of salmon. In Christchurch, the South Today.
While the Warbirds over Wanaka air show was cancelled this Easter, one pilot who regularly flies at the event decided to stage his own aerobatics display. He flew a Trojan aircraft, a high-powered propeller plane from the 1950s, which is ideal for aerobatic stunts.
The Warbirds over Wanaka International Air Show may have been cancelled over Easter for a second time due to COVID-19 concerns, but that didn't stop Brent Emeny. The Taranaki pilot decided to fly down anyway to catch up with friends and show off some aerobatic manoeuvres in his Trojan T-28. He says the high-powered plane was built in the 1950s to be a trainer for jet pilots.
So they've designed this aircraft, a high-powered aircraft with a similar sort of performance to the early jets, and it's got the same shaped windscreen and canopy and performance.
The Warbirds Air Show started in 1998 and is held every 2 years. It's grown into an event attracting more than 50,000 people to Wanaka over the Easter weekend. And while Emeny is disappointed this year's Warbirds didn't get airborne, he's looking forward to the next show in 2024.
We had about 16 aircraft we'd arranged to come down to this show. So including the Catalina flying boat and the Yak aerobatic team, and it goes on and on. So we'll, yes, absolutely, we're looking forward to that, and it should be a huge show, being 6 years.
Warbirds over Wanaka is estimated to inject more than $40 million into the region's economy. In Wanaka, the South Today.
Bagpipers entertained hundreds of people in Oamaru with a sunset concert on Good Friday. The North Otago Highland Pipe Band performed a variety of traditional tunes, finishing with Amazing Grace as the sun went down.
Bagpipes skirled out under the setting sun in Oamaru on Easter Good Friday. For the second year in a row, the North Otago Highland Pipe Band gathered at Lookout Point to perform a variety of songs to an audience of about 500. The performance concluded with a rendition of Amazing Grace at the request of a former Oamaru man who now lives in the United States. The man, who grew up in the area, asked for the piece to be played as a tribute to his mother. While the lyrics of the song were written by former slaver turned clergyman John Newton, the music was not. Newton's lyrics of Amazing Grace have been set to about 20 different melodies, with the tune called New Britain by composer William Walker being the most popular and the one performed at Oamaru on Friday. The pipe band intend to make the Easter performance an annual event. In Oamaru, the South Today.
And school families in Matoda walked the streets of the town looking for clues for an Easter scavenger hunt. It was all held as part of Easter celebrations, with those taking part having to solve clues to find the elusive eggs.
Why did these Matoda families cross the road? To hopefully find Easter eggs on the other side. The fun event was held for Matoda school families and organised by teachers Annabelle McPhail and Clare Connorton.
Today we are having a big Easter hunt. We have got some Easter eggs that the kids have decorated at 6 locations around the town. They're going to take a colour by numbers sheet.
Using their sheets, she says they followed a series of clues for the next part of their journeys. The teachers were pleased with the turnout, with many parents and children teaming up to compete as families.
And at each destination they'll colour some of their picture in, come back and get a wee Easter treat, and the family names are going into a basket so they can get into a prize draw for some more Easter goodies.
Wooden Easter eggs decorated by the pupils were also at each station, with local businesses helping make the festive event a success. In Gore, the South Today.
Whyte, still to come after the break on this edition of Southern Newsweek. A family reunite at the top of the lake near Queenstown, and motorcyclists show their skills in races near Christchurch. Tēnā koe, welcome back. The health of 2 critically endangered kakapo chicks has been checked over at Mosgill's Emeny facility through a medical-grade CT scanner. The pair were the first to be scanned under a new partnership between Ag Research and the Wildlife Hospital.
The premium treatment for one of our critically endangered birds. This kakapo chick, the first of its kind to get the full once-over via the special CT scanner.
Yeah, so this will definitely be the first time that any kind of native animal, a native bird, has been scanned at the Ag Research facility, so it's pretty exciting for all parties.
A CT scan's a special kind of X-ray, producing highly detailed internal images of the body. This machine at Ag Research's Emeny facility in Mosgill is generally used for scanning animals closer to humans in size, like sheep or deer.
The type of animals that we normally scan are farm animals that we're evaluating for how much meat and fat they have to try and improve their genetics.
This small and fluffy kakapo chick is quite a different patient. There are only 197 kakapo adults alive today, along with 57 chicks born this season, making each bird very valuable.
We've never had animals that are this precious, come through the scanner, and so if it can be used to try and get some better outcomes for that program, then that's just absolutely fantastic.
Ag Research has partnered with the Wildlife Hospital to offer 5 free scans a year of sick or injured wildlife. The hospital works closely with DOC's Kakapo recovery program, with concerns currently about an outbreak of the disease aspergillosis among the population on Anchor Island.
So we're double checking to make sure that these chicks don't have any signs of a lung infection or any other underlying disease that could compromise their health.
And while kakapo are flightless parrots, they do need a bit of extra help to ensure they stay still while inside the CT scanner.
The chicks will be sedated when they go into the machine. We can't tell them to stay still like you would with a human, so we do need to make them a bit sleepy.
These kinds of diagnostic tools giving vets and doc rangers more detailed information to assist with the care of some of our critical native species. In Dunedin, the South Today.
3 generations of the Birley family reunited in Glenorchy recently. The descendants of Harry Birley, one of the pioneers of Glenorchy, with the gathering holding a special significance for the family.
A reunion to remember. This reunion of 3 generations of the Birley family has been almost 40 years in the making. The happy gathering took place in Glenorchy over the Easter break. All are descendants of Harry Birley, who was a pioneer of the area. Harry's understood to be Glenorchy's first registered birth, and the first man to summit Mount Earnslaw. Lindsay Birley, great-grandson of Harry, says that the lack of travel opportunities in recent years motivated the family to get together again.
I guess with the lack of travel the last couple of years, we were sort of dying to get on the plane and get the family together, and it just seemed just a good idea at the time where it's pretty hard in this pretty crazy modern world getting everybody's diaries together, but we picked a couple of dates about 3 months ago and the weekend worked, so it's come together really well.
The family hasn't been all together since the funeral of Lindsay's mother in 1984. The Birley boys made the most of the reunion, spending Easter weekend together and catching up. Gerald Birley, the oldest living member of the family, says managing to get all of them together in one place is a remarkable achievement.
There wouldn't be many families for 3 generations like this. It's scattered around like we are, and then all come together. I think it's quite an amazing feat.
The Birley boys admit it could be one of their final reunions with all 3 generations together. But they enjoyed spending the long weekend as a group, reminiscing over their family's history and reacquainting themselves with the local area they feel connected to. In Glenorchy, the South Today.
There was a lot of wind and rain at the New Zealand Motorcycle Grand Prix meeting at Ruapuna over Easter weekend. But competitors made the best of the conditions to ride for national GP titles.
It shone, it blew and it rained, giving an extra challenge for competitors at the New Zealand Motorcycle Grand Prix meeting held over Easter weekend at Ruapuna. Superbike Grand Prix race winner Alastair Hoogenboezem of Templeton now holds both the New Zealand Formula 1 and Superbike Grand Prix titles. But he was just happy to be able to race after the National Superbike Points Series and International Racing Circuit were cancelled late last year.
Been waiting to get this one for a wee while. There's sort of definitely less of the field there, some away from injuries, and of course Damo and a few other guys overseas, but nevertheless it's still pretty good, and there's some good talent out there.
He says the racing was pretty close to national levels despite the cold and damp conditions, and he's thankful for clubs across the country quickly organising races to allow riders to get some competitive track time during the summer racing season. Motorcycling Canterbury's president, Charlett, says the club were pleased to have Grand Prix racing returning to its traditional home of Ruapuna.
Yeah, it's been absolutely awesome. We've been trying to run any races that we can because of the COVID situation and stuff like that. So we've just been, the club, our committee, they put a big effort to make sure we can make these these national events happen. You know, Grand Prix for the older classes, the Formula 1, Formula 2, and then this one here for the Superbikes and 600s and all the modern classes.
And it wasn't just veterans out on the track. Two 11-year-olds were granted special dispensation to be able to race against older competitors at the GP meeting. In Christchurch, the South Today.
Queenstown chef Vaughan Mabee is nominated as one of 100 candidates in the International Best Chef Awards. The Amisfield Winery chef says it's a bucket list honour for him as one of only 2 New Zealanders named on the list.
Cooking on the world stage. Queenstown chef Vaughan Mabee has received a global honour for his craft. The Amisfield Winery chef is one of 100 nominees, recently selected for the World's Best Chef Awards. It's welcome recognition, and Mabee says he's grateful to be on the list, alongside Ed Werner of Auckland's Pasture Restaurant.
It's an honour, man, you know. It's great for New Zealand. You know, I'm pretty stoked that there's a restaurant on the South Island and, you know, Amisfield and Pasture in the north with Chef Ed Werner.
Mabee spent 13 years away from New Zealand, working around Europe and the United States, refining his craft. But for the last decade, he's been cooking out of Central Otago. Mabee says he feels a connection to the region and gets a sense of accomplishment from his work.
I represent this region, you know, Central Otago. I've been, you know, cooking my heart out here for, you know, a decade, and you know, it hasn't been easy, as you know, being a chef has its ups and downs, but it feels quite rewarding.
Mabee says he'll continue to refine his work and is aiming to collaborate with local suppliers to create dishes that reflect the Otago region. In Queenstown, the South Today.
Whaiakane, still to come after the break on this edition of Southern Newsweek. The St Bathans Post Office gets a new lease of life, and an unusual variety of grape is harvested near Alexandra. Tēnā koe, welcome back. Alexandra's indoor ice curling rink has been marked up and refrozen in time for this year's season. The technician responsible for cooling the layers of ice says it's a job that needs to get done slowly to get the best result.
Getting ready for 30 millimetres of frozen water, ice technician Reece Aiken seals the seams of Alexandra's indoor curling rink before it gets covered in ice for the winter curling season. It takes about a week to bring the ice up to the required 30 millimetre thickness, with layer upon layer carefully poured and frozen. Aiken's based in Dunedin but has created ice for rinks across New Zealand and overseas, and he says the important thing is not to rush the job.
If you follow the steps and take your time, most of the time you get it right. You have issues if can't get the fridge plant cold enough at different stages when you want it to be cold.
One of the challenges they faced in Alexandra is the presence of dissolved lime in the water supply.
Ideally you're wanting pure water. The better quality of the water, the better the playing surface and the conditions you can produce.
The indoor curling rink opened to the public a year ago, and Aiken believes being sheltered from the elements will encourage more people to try out the sport.
It's just good to have another curling rink in New Zealand that's indoors and gives more people a chance to have a go at the sport.
There are 2 dedicated curling rinks indoors, along with 5 more outside. In Alexandra, the South Today.
The Central Otago township of St Bathans has 2 more historic buildings taken under the wing of the local community association. One of those is the town's 2-storey former post office, which was designed by a noted architect in the early 1900s.
The 112-year-old former post office in St Bathans may look tidy on the outside, but inside the building's a little worse for wear. In an effort to preserve the local site, the St Bathans Area Community Association has taken on the lease of the Victorian-style building. Treasurer Ewan Johnstone says the move will allow parts of the old post office to be restored and opened to visitors.
The public come along, look at it and want to go in it. So we've taken the initiative from that, and the fact that we're using the building will probably preserve it better than it sitting vacant.
The two-storey timber building dates back to 1909 and was designed by noted architect John Campbell. John Stone believes it's important the historic structure is preserved.
Well, it's the history of the town. In the days gone by, the post office was the centre of town, and if we lose that, the centre's going out of town.
Local Tricia Batkins says she's planning to contribute to the museum with her knowledge of genealogy and history.
I would hope that we will be able to have some days when I can be here with all the records and help people start researching their ancestors who lived in the area.
The association's also taken on the lease of the neighbouring Bank of New South Wales and Gold Office building, which is also listed as a Historic Place Category 1 site. In St Bathans, the South Today.
One Central Otago vineyard is proudly standing alone in harvesting a grape variety not usually seen in the area. Thyme Hill Vineyard near Alexandra is officially recognised as being the southernmost New Zealand maker of Merlot wine.
Harvesting what is an unusual grape variety for Central Otago. Friends, family and neighbours pitched in to help the recent harvest at Thyme Hill Vineyard near Alexandra. And while most Central Otago vineyards grow grapes for Pinot Noir, Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc, the grapes on this north-facing 6-hectare site are the Merlot variety, which prefers warmer weather. Vineyard owner Inge Diks believes she is the only winemaker this far south bottling Merlot wine for sale. She's using vines planted as a trial here almost 30 years ago.
The Merlot here on this vineyard was planted started in 93, and I bought the vineyard 10 years ago with the Merlot plants on it, and I gave it a go to produce Merlot wine from it.
And it seems to be a good drop. The Otago Daily Times wine reviewer Mark Henderson rated Thyme Hill's Vineyard's 2016 Merlot as very good to excellent. In Alexandra, the South Today.
A Gore woman who passed away 2 years ago has left behind a legacy of beautifully intricate dolls' houses that she put together during her retirement. Her husband now has a home filled with about 20 dolls' houses and isn't quite sure what to do with them all.
Dolls' houses made in exquisite detail. Jim Logan is sharing his Gore home with about 20 dolls' houses, all built by his wife Vaughan, who passed away 2 years ago.
She did work at the Matera Freezing Works for 19 years, and when she retired, this was her hobby. Dolls and dolls' houses. And it never stopped. It got bigger and bigger and bigger.
He says his wife made some of the wooden houses from scratch, while others were assembled from kit sets. Her attention to detail reveals a creative eye for interior decorating.
I've seen one of her old diaries here where she wished she had been a designer, but she reckoned the paperwork would have been too much for her. And she would have been a good designer too.
Many of the dolls' houses are distinctly Southland in style. There's one matching the Kirk family illegally distilling whisky in Mataura in the 1940s.
They were caught and went to jail for a period of time. While they were in jail, the old lady kept on selling the whisky that they had bottled up. And when the two men came home from jail, they got a hero's welcome in Mataura.
Logan isn't sure what will happen with the collection of dolls' houses long term, but he doesn't want to see them split up. So for now, they'll be staying with him. In Gore, the South Today.
And that wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news and videos from the Southern region, head online to odt.co.nz. And you can follow Channel 39 on YouTube to catch our news bulletins on demand. Nō reira, kia pai te pō, ka kite anō.
Public interest journalism funded through New Zealand On Air.